what is the output from this configuration? Is it a unique and separate mobile application for every one that you configure?
No, not really. So remember what we do is we put a client on the device.
Okay.
And the client enables us to provide enterprise-level security on the device, enables us to provide offline functionality, and enables us to generate that interface that the user sees on the device. But that client is connected to our service, and that service is either running in a hosted environment or you can deploy it behind your own firewall as a virtual appliance. And every time the user makes a request from their device, I want to see my report, I want to query the database in the following way, basically our service, the Webalos service, sits there, receives that user request, goes to the back-end application, pulls the data, drives it out to the device to render the interface on the device.
So am I to understand then that there's really only one mobile client on your device, but you can add additional processes to that same client?
Yes, the user gets that, as I said earlier, that single client access to the enterprise. So I see one icon on my device, I press it, I see a list of what you would call in the traditional world, I guess, a list of different mobile applications.
Okay.
But in our context, they're all just there inside one client.
So you're not covering the whole screen with different icons. You've got one icon, and you're just adding, if you would, mobile apps to that same icon.
Exactly, and it's a very particular, personalized, productive experience for the user in that context.
So you had talked earlier about a customer, National Health, I believe.
National Health Service in the UK, yeah.
Okay, so the National Health Service, which is massive, of course. Now, you had suggested or said that it took mere hours to create some of their applications?
Yes, there's actually, they just released a case study a couple of weeks back that talks about several of these applications that they've put together. They have an application for pharmacists to be able to, from their BlackBerries, access an inventory of 86,000 different drugs, prescribe those drugs, deploy those drugs in the context of finding where they're located in the hospital and having them delivered to the right ward or the right doctor to get to the patient. They have an application for accident and emergency to monitor the performance of the accident and emergency department, an application for neurosurgeons to be able to refer patients between one doctor and another and update patient records. They've really got a very broad range of mobile connections to the National Health Service at this particular hospital environment that they've been able to do. And yes, if you read the report they've written, it's all about the simplicity and the speed with which they were able to do that. But you'll find that message across all Webalos customers. It's about this rapid deployment, this ease of connection to the enterprise.
So on average, how long do you think it takes them to build an application and get it deployed?
Most of the connections seem to take a matter of a few hours or less. Deployment depends a lot on user availability, training times, some of the normal processes.
Right.
But typically the National Health Service, other customers talk about, hours and days to get this functionality out there as being their core experience.
So that's going to create a whole different ROI if producing new mobile applications, if you would, take mere hours or days. Now that's a whole different ROI model than most of us are familiar with.
Yeah,
so how does that actually change the kind of the economic model of a company considering mobility if these things are only taking hours and days? How do they look at things different than if they really can start producing these in hours and days?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I would be honest and say we're new into the market. Webalos only been in the market for a year. We're gaining this experience almost on a daily basis, and we're talking to our customers about it. And the message seems to be that it drives a very different thought process. Typically, companies will come to this thinking of the traditional ROI model. It's going to take me this amount of time. It's going to cost me this much to do. I've got this many people on it. I'm then going to get this in users' hands. There's a very traditional model that users go through. When you suddenly turn that on its head, we had an example with a customer the other day where 40 minutes after their user group asking for a particular set of functionality they wanted in their mobile environment, they had it on their mobile device. As they said to me, that there is no ROI calculation that just needs to be done. You just know you're making your users and your company more productive, and the ROI will flow through in the fact that they're now able to access that particular enterprise application from their iPad. So it's difficult to capture this into what the sort of core economics are of a Webalos solution. It clearly drives a very, very different way of thinking about the whole connectivity, mobile connectivity process.
I know that I personally worked on ROI projections for mobile applications, and I've spent several weeks just driving or creating and writing up an ROI justification document. And I think I would reconsider that effort if I could produce the whole application in a day.
Right. So I think part of the ROI calculation comes with this model in saying, okay, well, let's deploy this to users because we're going to do that in a day or less. Let's deploy it to users, and let's see what the ROI is going to be in real time. So you could see, we talk about this double ROI, this rapid ROI or real-time ROI, where what you do is instead of calculating the cost and the time and the effort to build this and then working back to see what the ROI might be, you just deploy it, and then you see, is that going to generate an ROI for us? And so shall we go from the 10-user pilot to maybe the 10,000-user deployment? You can drive a very, very different, a real-time ROI model.
Now, one of the things I'm pondering as we're having this discussion, Peter, is there's a lot of talk in the market about MEAPS, and that's an acronym for Mobile Enterprise Application Platform. And I guess you basically would have a MEAP in the cloud. That's a Webalos MEAP. Is that how you look at it, or what role do you see MEAPS playing out?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, if you take the view, you've got a sort of pre-Webalos MEAP world and a post-Webalos MEAP world. So, my perspective would be on the current mobile enterprise application platforms. That's a very different type of model, right? That's the sort of software development toolkit, Java programmers' set of tools to enable you to do that traditional build a new application approach. And clearly we've come along with a very different way of doing it. Now, but in the context of us being a platform that enables an enterprise to deploy mobile connections for their users, then we are a MEAP, and we're just a new way of providing that MEAP functionality. And certainly it's available in the cloud, whether the cloud environment be hosted by us or be hosted by the company itself as a virtual appliance behind their firewall. And the existing MEAP world is providing an approach to mobility that is very different to what Webalos is bringing into the market. So the comparison is hard to make directly, and I guess our perspective would be that if you give us that moniker, if you apply MEAP to Webalos, then we're a new type of MEAP. We're a very different approach, as I hope has come clear from this discussion.
Yeah, I was reading a quote by your CTO, Seth Bruder, this morning, and it says, Webalos standardizes and commoditizes enterprise mobility, and this sets us apart from other approaches.
Yeah.
Now, and in a lot of ways, a traditional MEAP is supposed to help standardize some of that and commoditize some of that. but you guys are doing it different. Do you have how would you respond to that comment from your CTO?
Yeah, this is a very important differentiation about Webalos, but perhaps it's a tough one to explain. So if you take that traditional, as you call it, MEP approach,
yeah.
Every time you do something with that approach, you're building a new mobile app, a new application. That's really what you're doing. You're
a new set of code.
Right. You're generating new code. Now, whenever you generate new code, you're creating, more infrastructure, more complexity, more security risk inside your company. When Seth talks about us standardizing and commoditizing, what he's talking about is we've built a platform, and that platform is available to our users and our prospective users to access and evaluate and try. Remember, you don't pay anything for Webalos until you've actually deployed to your users. That's another very unique difference. You don't have to invest in all that infrastructure and people to do this because it's so quick. You can just get an account with our service and try it out. And all of that is packaged. It is commoditized. It's a single package solution that doesn't change. Our client is no different for the National Health Service to General Electric to Wells Fargo to any customer that might use us. It's the same client, and so it's a standard. It doesn't change. It's not open to new security risks or the kind of holes that are created every time you have to develop new applications, write new code, etc. And then all you're doing is you're connecting, again, to enterprise applications and data sources that you've already built, that are already standardized inside your company, that you've already had approved by your security department, that users are already using. You're just providing a way of viewing those and a way of interacting with those out onto a mobile device in the Webalos secure client environment. So it's a very standardized way of enabling mobility across a very broad range of companies and application types and user types and device types.
Well,
and,
Peter,
such a very different approach.
Absolutely. And Peter, I'm really excited to watch how this all unveils in the marketplace, because I do see this as a unique model, and I'm intrigued, and I'm going to be watching the progress of Webalos very closely. And I want to thank you today for joining me and sharing information on your model and your innovations here with us today, Peter.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's a very exciting time in our industry. Everything that's going on in mobility is very impactful in terms of all these enterprises, and it's a pleasure sharing those experiences with you.
Thank you again.